Make the seats creak. I remember in 2010, I had kind of a panic attack. I drove in the back and I drove all the way around the building and just real slow. And I'm just looking at this thing going, oh my gosh. And I pulled around and back and I parked back here behind my office. And I sat in my car and I just said, what have I done?
What we're experiencing as a church now was never in this plan. We never knew what it would look like. We just tried to be faithful each step of the way. This is beyond what we could have imagined, because that's just how big our God is.
The word big doesn't even, God is massive. And I don't think, honestly, until this whole movement started, that I understood the power. Nothing is out of God's reach.
Let me get one more, a little closer. Let's see if I can get the whole sign.
He had the sweater vest. We were like 29. You know, it was like, what are we doing? And it's not what are we doing, it's what is God doing.
I remember I was trying to think back of a lot of beginnings, a lot of first things, and really praying about what do you do? What do you say on the first service of a new church?
It was 1999, the summer of 1999, and on the plane to Toronto for that mission trip, I had the folder with all the information in it. And I remember on the plane, Mike sat beside me, and we were going over the papers in the folder, and then at some point he turned to me and said, I have something to tell you. We're starting a church.
In some ways, we had accomplished what we had hoped. You know, there was this building built, there was a lot of people that showed up. From an appearances standpoint, it felt like Port City is really successful. But what was going on more deeply inside is like, are we really making a difference in our community? Are we really making a difference inside of people's lives?
One of our younger staff members, I asked her, how has the mission and vision of Port City Church become yours? In 1999, you dream of what a church could be like. And it's limited because you don't know, I didn't know anything really. But you dream about this and this helpful and all these things that you want this church that you're gonna be a part of to be.
I am the way that I am because I first found a sense of belonging. It was a sense of belonging I found in my internship as a member of our church, and a sense of belonging that I now get to feel on a staff team. Because to be so honest, I'm not at all convinced that becoming would be compelling without belonging. And what radically changed my perspective is realizing that my focus should be a part of a collective, a group of people, of belonging to something with a greater focus than self-ambition.
She came into our church after it had been up and running for 20 years. And now she's describing what I dreamed 25 years before. And it's just unbelievable.
It is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. In fact, the clip that you see running around of the first service when I said, what do you say at the first service of a new church? The next line was, I actually have no idea. That was the next line. What we want to do tonight, because there's something really important to acknowledge. I was walking backstage and one of our friends back there, Joe, he goes, are you okay? I said, I'm okay, I'm a little nervous. Because I saw people actually, let's do this real quick. If you were in the house, the Willis house in 1999, I know I asked you this earlier, would you stand up? Let me see you guys. If you were in the Willis house, there were like 20 of us. There they are, look at this. These are the crazy people who believe we were starting a church. if you were in Roland Grice in the first 6 months, could you stand up? Roland Grice Middle School, the first 6 months. Some of you guys, I know. See Greg. Yeah. I see all of you guys, and I could tell stories about all the things that happened that were terrifying and encouraging. And when I walked in and I saw Mitch and Mark Willis, I had the exact emotion that I remember feeling in those first few meetings. And I told them, I said, my stomach felt immediately the same way, right? Just like you got this thing. And I was back there and talking to Joe, and Joe said, are you all right? I said, man, 25 years, can you believe it? He says, not this 25 years you got to worry about. It's the next 25 years you got to worry about. And that's the point of tonight. We don't want to do that. One of the things that what we want to do tonight is going to be more important than you can know. And I want to just start there. We cannot understand the importance of what this is from the perspective that we currently have. You'll look back 5 years, 10 years from now, regardless of where you are in your journey, and you'll say, if I took this moment seriously, it changes things. And so that's what I want for us to do tonight, because here's what I've learned. This is the beginning of that, and there's the thing you just saw is a trailer. There's a 5-part kind of documentary short thing that we've put together. It'll be on YouTube. I think it'll be posted over the next couple weeks. It's on YouTube now. It's fantastic. Sam and Rick and Zach and their team did an amazing job putting this together. And it kind of tells the story of these moments in our church. But I had a panic attack when I came in here. It was about 2000, right after our 10-year anniversary. It was about a year-long panic attack, actually. And because I remember there was all these people coming to our church. I remember everybody thinks that we know what we're doing, and we don't. Like, that was what it feels like. We knew how to attract a crowd. We knew how to do all these things. And here's what it took me a long time to understand. Because vision is what people talk about, and a vision's a thing. But vision only comes to you at your capacity to see things, at your capacity to understand things, which is always limited. And so this vision that we had for the church was limited by what we could see, the best we could see. And it wasn't wrong or bad. It wasn't any of those things. It was just what it required. So we could only see so far. And what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010 is we had achieved everything that we could see. And you know what happens when you achieve everything that you can see? What most people do is you go, whew, we did it. And then you rest on that. But there was something driving us. And I remember what panicked me was that I did not know what to do next. Did not know what to do next. And so this question wasn't a question. It's like, what have I done? It wasn't a question. It was a desperate declaration. Like, I'm done with it. I don't know what to do. So what have I done? You just can't figure it. And I started to say, Lord, what do we do now? It's the same way we began. Lord, could you help us to see? Could you help us to see? Could you help us to see? And what that began is a process of learning to see beyond what we had already experienced. And this is where the hardest work gets done. Because this is where you can't rely on all the things that you have done. You can't rely on, and this is what's important about this. And everybody will tell you in those early days, when we were, the sign that you saw in the picture, that sign, that vinyl sign that hangs on the wall back there, it's still there, because we had to have a board meeting. Jimmy, remember this. Mitch, I think you were chairman of the board then. We had to have a board meeting to spend $87 to purchase that sign. That sign sits back there because I'm always reminded of how dependent we are every single day we walk through this thing and see all this. That hasn't changed. But we get comfortable, and because we are familiar with what we see, and what we have seen is something really miraculous. But what if there's more for us to see? Right? That's the thing. That's what drives me. And so we told the story Sunday, Joshua, right, heading into the promised land. Moses passed through water, leading the children of Israel out of slavery. Moses is going to cross a body of water, leading them into the promised land. And if we were here Sunday, it's in Joshua chapter 3. And God gives Joshua clear instructions. He says, I want you to get the priests. They're going to put the Ark of the Covenant, which is this box that was the symbolic of God's presence. Put the box on your shoulders, line up and march, and you're going to walk into the water. You walk into the water. Once their feet get wet, then the waters are going to back up. And the order of operations is very important there because a lot of people, they sit around wondering, when is God going to do something? And the answer to that question is, he moves when you get your feet wet. He moves when you take a step. He puts ground underneath our feet as we walk. That's how God invites us to live. And so they're all there and he gives them these instructions. You get your feet wet, the waters are going to part, we're going through. And usually like this rah-rah speech, you get together, you go, okay, everybody ready, got your instructions ready, set, go. And then you're off to the races. And the very next verse after this instruction isn't ready, set, go. It's Joshua chapter 4, verse 3, verse 5. And he says this, Joshua, I want you to tell the people to consecrate themselves because tomorrow God is going to do something that they have not experienced before. And the call for us tonight is to consecrate ourselves, to take a moment, to stop, to cherish and say 25 years of God's faithfulness is extraordinary. We have seen incredible things. Even if you're just walking in, you've seen incredible things. But there is so much more. There's so much more that God longs to do in and through his church. And y'all, it ain't the vision of a leader. It ain't the vision of a few people that are going to get it done. It's going to be the vision of a collection of people who see something different and are willing to give themselves to it. We have to see this. You're not going to see it in a hurry. You're not going to see it on the fly. We're going to have to consecrate ourselves. We're going to have to enter into some places. This is a beautiful thing that God has done. And people say all the time, like, and I assume the reason most of you are here is because you had some interaction with our church that has changed your life in some capacity. That's my story. And what I would tell you is it's a beautiful thing for that to happen, but it is a serious thing for that to happen. People walk in to our doors and they walk in and they rub shoulders with us and they avail themselves to us and they encounter something about us, which we know is Jesus. And it changes them and it invites them and it draws them. It is a serious thing to be given that kind of privilege in the life of another human being. It's not flippant, it's not a platform, it's not cool, let's put this post on Instagram. It is a serious thing. And I believe what's going to be required of the church in the next 25 years is going to require us to see some things that we haven't seen before. You know, part of what I loved hearing Chris tonight lead us, and the stories from Olivia and Chad and Roland and Jennifer. It's moving, it's inspiring, it connects me, it reminds me of so many things that have happened in the past, and I'm so grateful for them. Part of what has been so helpful to me is over the last 5 years, we have more leaders making more decisions about the future of our church than we've ever had before. That's a really good thing. And one of the people who has done that for me as much as anybody else is who I'm going to introduce to you next, and he's going to lead us in our time. But the reason it's so important because a lot of these young guys would have ideas about our church, and when I would sit down with them, I'd feel like they're criticizing me. Like they're telling me, Mike, we should do this. I'm like, who do you think you are? We started this thing, right? You feel like that. And Clay was in my office and he was telling me his vision for the church. And he looked at me and he says, Mike, I'm not trying to replace you. I want to be helpful to you. And it was hard because you feel all this responsibility for everything and you realize that all these folks who've been in our church for so long, they want to carry this responsibility too. And so Clay Everett has taught me to do this. And so I'm going to invite Clay and his wife, Courtney, two of the best people that I know. And let them lead you in time. Clay and Courtney, I want to thank you guys for your faithfulness to our church. You were here in service number 2.
Yep.
And you were here shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I showed up eventually.
Showed up what?
Eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Dated, had Chick-fil-A biscuits at Chick-fil-A Mayfair talking about ministry.
Yeah.
Y'all got married in 2003, that's correct. And now you guys are both pastors and serve in tremendous leadership capacities in our church. And thank you.
Yeah.
And would you lead us in this time to mark a moment for us today? Y'all,
Yeah,
thanks,
glad to.
Clay and Courtney. Yep, thank you.
Thanks
Love
to Mike.
y'all. Thank you. Thank you.
So tonight's a night of celebration, and we certainly want to celebrate, and I hope that we've already kind of entered in that space. But Courtney and I just want to lead us into a moment of kind of inviting us to enter in ourselves to the story of 25 years of Port City. And then us collectively to kind of rally around this together, to kind of mark this moment, to kind of consecrate ourselves and what God might do for us, and really to begin to pivot from looking back at the past 25 years and God's faithfulness and begin to look ahead to the future in faith, full of faith of what God might do in and through our church over the next 25 years. And the reality is, for all of us in a room this size with the stories that I know, we all come into this moment from different places, right? We all have our own experience. We all have our own stories that intersect with the story of Port City at different times. But the thing that we all share is at one point in time, all of us walked in this church for the very first time. Maybe tonight's your very first time. You showed up on a great night. It's awesome.
Yeah,
You're like,
welcome.
what is happening? But we all showed up at a time. And the reality is something brought us here. And so I just want to invite us, as me and Courtney kind of lead us this time, to consider and to contemplate and to reflect what brought you to Port City Community Church. Something brought you here, right? Maybe it was a new season. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was some really big questions about God that you were asking. Maybe it was totally random circumstances and you don't know how you showed up at Port City Church. Or maybe you showed up because you were desperate for help and you came. And so for you, just consider what brought you to Port City, what brought you here. And not just this building, but Port City, all the different places we've been across Wilmington and Leland and New Bern. What brought you here? And when you showed up, what did you experience? What did you feel? What happened?
Yeah. I think it's such a good question. And as we've been kind of looking back over the last month, I thought about what actually brought me to Port City. Yeah. And it's actually so simple. It was an invitation. Yeah. And that might be some of your stories, but I was a freshman in college, and I was in my Uni 101 class, which is your freshman seminar, and I'm sitting there, and there's this girl, a new friend, brand new friend, and she is so excited and full of joy to share about this new church that's starting, and she invites me to come. I couldn't come the first week, and then there was a hurricane too, but I couldn't come the second, or the rescheduled first week. Yep. So I came the second week, and that invitation quickly unfolded in a way that I didn't expect. I thought it was just an invitation to come and check out a service, to show up. And she invited me to come and see and to check it out, but what she invited me into was so much bigger than that, y'all. She invited me to come and see and meet Jesus. She invited me to get to know Jesus, to learn to walk with him, and really not just to know about him, but to experientially know Jesus in an intimate way. And that invitation, it honestly is what God used to shape my whole life. Yeah. When I look back at my time here, I just feel this sense of gratitude because I literally feel like I've grown up here. I was an 18-year-old when I first walked through the doors. I'm not going to tell you how old I am now. But what I will say is I know that God used that invitation in powerful ways to shape who I became, who I am still becoming. Yeah. And for all of us in this room, wherever we sit, however we entered into this space, God has used your experience and your participation in this church to shape you and to form you. You are who you are, maybe because of how God has used this church family and these people and these relationships. And so, I mean, just think about that. Like, what has it been like for you? How has God impacted you through your participation and your experience here at this church? Yeah. Just think about it.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it for myself for these past couple of weeks, and it's a lot to process.
It is.
25 years is a long time to think about something, and for me, it's 20-some years. But as I was pondering that question, how has the church impacted my life? It has matured me in my walk with God like no other place and no other people. And I did show up long before this building. I was there at Roland Grice in the early days, but it was actually in this room for me when I began to really catch a glimpse of God's goodness, and where I really began to believe that I was fully known and fully loved by God, where I began to find my approval and my worth and my identity in Jesus and nothing else. Yeah. And for me, that has freed me to be who God says I am and to live out of that place, already approved. I don't have to prove a thing. And I get to stand in that grace each and every day. And so for me, I think so much about this room, this space, with Mike teaching, with Chris leading worship, and just hearing God say, I love you, Clay. I approve of you. I know you fully, but I love you completely. And each of us, I think, probably have a similar story of how this church has impacted us. And I just wonder tonight, as we celebrate and as we begin to kind of turn that corner, what if, as we think about what brought us here and what God has done in us individually, the impact that he has made in our lives through this place, through these people, what if that impact over these 25 years becomes our prayers for the next 25 years? What if the way that God has shown up in your life and in your family through this church turns into your prayer for what God might do in and through our church and the lives of people 25 years from now? Children who come into our church who have not yet been born. But we would say, God, you did this in me, you did this in us, and we just want to pray, God, that you would do this in others. And so tonight, that's what we're going to do, is we are going to begin to pray some bold prayers of faith. And say, God, you did it for me. Would you do it for somebody else? Would you show up in someone's life? Would you change them? Would you show them their identity? Would you give them a sense of belonging? Would you invite them in to know you? And to really know you, like relationally know you, not just know about you, but to be totally and utterly transformed by you. And so tonight, we are going to mark a moment by praying prayers of faith for the next 25 years. And that's for all of us, whether you are currently a part of Port City Community Church or you came back tonight to be a part of this. Actually, we would covet your prayers. Yeah. And so we're going to pray prayers of faith over what God might do in and through us over the next 25 years. Do you want to tell us how we're going to do that, Courtney?
Yes, well, thank you for your piece of paper. That's pretty handy. So all of you have a little blue sheet on your chair, and either a Sharpie or a pen should be on your aisle or at your seat. And we're going to carve out some space here for you guys to reflect in just a posture of silence and write out your prayers of faith. And then you can probably see we have faith on the walls. And we're going to invite you guys to take your prayer of faith and pin it onto the letters of faith. Yeah. And there's going to be, again, a time of silence and where we can write and reflect on that. And then we're going to move into a time of worship. And feel free to move around the room during worship if that's when you'd like to go and pen your prayer. Hold on to it. You can pen it as you walk out of the room to go share dessert with your friends. But we invite you to do that. But before we do, I want to pray us into this space. I want to pray over us as we enter into this space. And so would you pray with me? Jesus, we ask for bold faith, to ask and pray bold prayers. Jesus, would you lead us to trust you? Father, would we depend on you? And in that, Jesus, would you help us to see?